Hey Counter Slammers, welcome to yet another model review. In the wake of Jason Watt winning Gen Con, both the Masters and the Iron Gauntlet with Convergence of Cyriss, I thought I would go ahead and review the final model that we didn't get to actually review for the Convergence of Cyriss faction focus, which is the battle engine here, the Transfinite Emergence Projector, and the permutation servitors. It's one of my new favorite models in Convergence, and I thought that I would go ahead and share with you what it can do and why I think it's so special. One of the cool things about it is that it's made out of the new plastics, so when you're putting it together, it actually kind of snaps together. You almost don't even need glue. I've seen people put them together without the glue. There's only a couple pieces you need to be careful when you're popping them out of the little plastic trays because they will bend and potentially break, so you have to be really careful. But the rest of it is really solid. And it goes together very quickly. I actually put one together while I was waiting for a game to start. That's how quick I was able to put it together. The permutation servitors are also made out of the new plastic, so they're very lightweight, and they're not metal like the other servitors that we get. And it's just like I said, it's a beautiful looking model. It's really cool. The tower with all the little legs kind of walking. It's pretty neat. So anyway, let's get into its stats and see what it can do and why I think it's so cool. So looking at the Transfinite Emergence Projector, or the TEP, you basically have, it has 20 hitboxes. It's a 9-point cost model, and they're FA2, just like all the other battle engines. It's a speed 5, strength 10, mat nothing, rat 4, defense 10, armor 19. It is a construct, of course, and it has one attack, which is a 10-inch spray. It's rate of fire 1 and a POW 10. Looking at those stats initially, you may think that that's not very impressive, but what its abilities have given it sort of a survivability that actually makes it really worth taking, and it can do some serious damage and hit targets really reliably, which is really great. Which you wouldn't think with rat 4, POW 10, how's it going to kill anything? But you'll see how it works here in just a second. So it is a gun platform, so the model can make ranged attacks even while in melee. It has sacrificial pawn to its own permutation servitors it puts into play. So when it gets directly hit with an enemy attack, it can have one of the servitors get hit instead. It suffers all the damage and effects from those shots. It says servitor satellites. At the start of the model's activation, remove any permutation servitors this model puts into play from the table. Once per activation, after its normal movement, this model can place up to 3 permutation servitors anywhere within 1 inch of this model. So basically, at the beginning of your turn, or at the beginning of your activation of this, you remove the servitors in play that you have in play, you move your battle engine, and then you replace these into play however you want to. And based on its firing formulae, depending on where you put them, it helps to increase its damage or accuracy. So let's take a look at the permutation servitors real quick before we get back to the last couple of abilities and see what these guys do. So they're speed 6, which is actually sort of negligible, which you'll see here in a second. Strength 3, mat 5, rat 5, again negligible. They don't have any attacks. They are like all the other servitors. They are defense 12, armor 13, construct. They have Pathfinder. They're all steady. These guys, however, have the ability Orbit, which says that they don't begin the game in play and they don't activate. The tower basically cannot target or hit the permutation servitors when it makes its attacks. And of course, if the tower leaves play, the servitors leave play as well. So looking at the attacks from the tower itself, it has auto fire 2. It says make 2 ranged attacks targeting a primary target and any number of secondary targets within 2 inches of the first target, ignoring intervening models when declaring secondary target. It only counts as 1 rate of fire, one shot towards the rate of fire. So basically, when you're targeting something, you have to make sure that you target a particular model, and then you can only target models within 2 inches of that first target. Now there's some ways to kind of get around this, and we'll get into this in just a second, but yeah, so you have to be really careful when you're determining your sprays, because I thought originally when I first got it that you could spray out into one guy and then pick a guy on the other side of the table and spray that direction. You can't do that. You have to be really careful with that. But looking at let's take a look at its firing formula real quick, and then I'll get into a little bit of how to sort of cheat the system. So firing formulae: when this model makes a ranged attack with this weapon during its activation, determine the position of the permutation servitors this model put into play. For each completely within its left firing arc, this model gains an additional dice on its attack rolls. For each completely within its right firing arc, this model gains an additional die on its damage rolls. for each completely within its back arc, this model makes an additional auto-fire attack. So obviously, depending where you put the servitors, if you need to hit something that's really, has high defense, I think in Mage Hunter Assassins, things like that, you can put, or Iris, for example, you could put 2 servitors on the left side and get 4 dice to hit, which is pretty good. And then, of course, if you have something that's low defense, high armor, you put them on the right side, and you get extra dice for damage. And even at POW 10s, when you're rolling 4 or 5 dice for damage, that can actually be very devastating. And if your models, and model you're going after is knocked down, you could potentially throw all 3 on the damage side, get 5 dice for damage, and still get 2 sprays at that target. So it's really, really nice. And of course, if you need to make more sprays, you can always throw them in the back. When I run them, I usually tend to put one in the front, or one on the left, one on the right, one in the back, just because it seems to usually make the most sense. Even with Rat 4, rolling 3 dice to hit is usually pretty good. It's really rare that whatever I send this guy after he doesn't kill. I've killed beasts, jacks, casters, solos, everything. It does a really, really good job of putting damage on the table and really just making sure that you hit what you need to hit and clearing out the areas you need to clear out. It's just a fantastic model for doing that. To sort of circumvent the whole, just picking one direction, kind of firing in one area, one thing you can do is you can't target your permutation servitors, but you can target things like the accretion servitors. You can run the accretion servitors in front and spray those guys, and as long as they're within 2 inches, you could open up that field of your spray field. Another way to get around this is if you have your infantry guarding it in front, and they have the little UA that gives you the ability to ignore those models when making your attacks. That's another way that you can sort of spread out the damage. And so there's a couple ways that you can kind of keep this guy, or keep this guy doing the damage you want him to do. As far as protection goes, he's very hard to hit. Obviously, if he's behind your infantry and someone's trying to shoot him, they have to shoot him at least 4 times to do any damage to him, because you can sack pawn to the servitors. If you're taking Father Lucant, then you have a bunch of shield guards too with your jacks and your casters, so it can be almost impossible to shoot this guy off the table in Father Lucant's list. There's a list I take with Iron Mother where I take 2 Transfinite Emergence Projectors and the Prime Axiom, and it works really well towards clearing out infantry so that I can move my Prime Axiom up to hit the bigger targets. Like I said, it's a fantastic model. When I take 2, I usually lose 1 on the table. Usually they end up making up. They end up making up for the points if I take them on the table. It's rare that they don't do anything or they don't accomplish whatever task I set out for them to do, because it really is that good. I think personally that this battle engine is probably about the second or third best battle engine in the game, and that's saying a lot. But the Menaltha one is still probably the best, and it's really hard to beat that one. Its abilities are just stupid. The Legion of Everblight one is really good with the flight and the 4-inch reach and the Battle Wizard and all that kind of stuff. It can do a lot of damage too. But this one here is probably right up there with the Legion one. It's really good. And if you're not playing it, I highly recommend picking it up. If you're kind of on the fence, definitely go for it. I'm telling you, you won't regret it. It's a lot of fun to play, even though you get made fun of a lot for the way that it looks. But it's still a fun model to play. And people a lot of times just don't know what it does, and so you can kind of catch them off guard a little bit. They don't realize about how effective the firing formula is. They don't realize the sack pawn and what a nuisance it could be to get rid of. The amount of effort they have to put into killing it, especially if you have a unit in front, can be pretty disheartening, I think, for your opponent. So yeah, lots of reasons to take it. It's a lot of fun to play. It was definitely a breath of fresh air after playing Convergence, without it for a long time. It's sort of a whole new dynamic that is pretty cool. And yeah, so it just sort of meets your needs, whatever you need, whenever you need it, is basically what it is. And it's a cool little tool and option for the game. So again, if you haven't gotten it, I would recommend it. If you're thinking about getting into Convergence, I don't know if it needs to be like one of the first purchases you get, but I think it needs to be an eventual purchase, because it is that good to me. And people really hate going up against it. So hopefully that's enough of a reason, to pick it up. But so anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the review. And again, congrats to Jason Watt for taking Gen Con with those victories. Definitely makes me really excited to keep pushing forward and playing with Convergence even more. And yeah, so we'll see you guys again on the next episode of Counterslam.